In this video help, what we're going to cover is both the logging in to the cloud, and what we're going to do is on this screen, when you put the URL in for the server for the cloud, it will display this screen where you'll have a login. You need to put the account name and password. Now each user has their own individual username and password. Depending upon the username and password you put in, the privileges that you have will determine how you see the screens and what you see on the server. But we're going to cover the menus mainly in this screen, so let's go ahead and stop here and I'll log in and come back. Depending upon the access privileges that you have, it'll either show one or more different applications. In this case, I have access as the administrator to these items on this server, which there are multiple servers. What I'm going to do is since I clicked in as the administrator, I have direct access. You may be required as an individual user with a lesser privileges. You may have to log in once more after you pick the application that you're going to want to use. So in this case, I'm going to click on it. You would get the same kind of a screen as I showed you before with the username and login before we had access. But since I'm an administrator, it goes directly in. Now on this screen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the main menu, and I'm going to indicate here on the main menu that if you look at the top, you'll see these icons and this information at the top of the screen. This is a page-by-page icon. Now in my applications, be aware that I have included for the server applications all the necessary buttons that are required in order to access this application on the server. You do not have to use the menu options above. And in some cases, there are certain parts of the cloud server information that I do not want you using or changing. These three icons should always stay the same. Do not click around and make modifications as you move through the screens. This is a drop-down menu, which is also supported on the FM Go on the iPad, that will give you all the different screens and tables that are included in this application. So depending upon the application, these will change. On this screen also, you'll see that there's a count of the records that you're currently looking at. You can see the type and number of, to go to of the different records. If you wanted to go to record 30, you could type it in and it would go directly there. On the server, one of the interesting things that it does is if you're in a list view where it shows rows of information as far as each individual record, this will show you the current amount of records that are being shown. And if you do a find using the find icon, then you will get a dash number. Basically, it'd be one of or two of on the number of records that are actually viewed. And what that would do is it'd show you the amount of records in the current selection that are shown on the screen. And that can be also in a input screen where it shows that same thing if you did a find. Now, I'll talk about finds in another video so you'll be very clear on how they work. Now, there's a show all button. If you had changed the using a find had changed the number of records in selection, you could click this icon, which will now be illuminated after a find, to show all the records again. To add a new record, now be aware, do not use add a new record unless you see an open lock icon or there is a new record button on the screen of the application. So you should be using that button. Let's go over to the customers and I'll show you what I mean. If you go in here, you'll see where it says new record, and in that case you would add a new record within this screen. So in this case it's unlocked and you would add a new record. On this particular application, which is an older one, you would use the new record up here. Not to confuse you with all the new ones, what I've done is add a new record on the actual screen or button on the app itself. If you're on the server and you're going to edit information on the screen, you need to, after you edit, to click the submit button to save that information. It's different than working on a computer or on the iPad. It requires that you submit the information at the end of the time that you're adding and changing data. The next thing is edit record. You can switch from the view mode, which I'm in currently, by clicking edit or clicking in a field when this menu at the top is not being shown. That will bring in the edit mode where you can actually edit the fields. Or when you click in them, it will go to edit mode. Let me click in there and show you how the menu options at the change at the top of the screen when I click in. Notice now it says submit and cancel or revert. Now in this particular case, cancel does the same thing actually as revert. It just cancels whatever the record changes are that you made, and then it moves on and puts the screen back to the normal mode. If you submit, it will submit the changes to the server. So let's go ahead and cancel from here, or revert. In this case, I didn't make any changes, so there's no revert to make. So I'm just going to hit cancel, and you'll see that the screen has moved back to the normal mode. You can delete a record. Now, this is a do not do kind of a situation again. The only place that you should ever use the delete button or not use it at the top is when you're in a portal record. You can change or delete a portal record. Now you can delete the input record, which is this main one. This is the parent record in the parent table. If you delete this record, you're going to delete or orphan all the records below it. All the child records in child tables would be orphaned, meaning that they would not have a parent record linked to them, and thereby would screw up your database. So do not do things like delete records unless there's an actual delete button on the main screens for this application. Do not use the delete button at the top of the screen at all. There is a next one where you can perform actions, and this current thing goes, you can duplicate a record, omit a record, omit multiple records, or show omitted. And you normally do this when you're in a table view. And for example, let's go ahead and go in and go to a, say like the customer table. Let's try a different screen. Let's go in and go to the list view. Let's drop over here and do it. We'll go to a list view screen. And let's see here. Gotta pick one. Let's go to, we'll go to inventory first and then pick its list view. In the list view, what you have is a screen where each individual record is shown as a single row in the actual screen. On this screen, what you can do is you can use this little button, and there's usually some kind of button that takes you back or into the actual record that you're working with. Now, if you wanted to omit a record, you can go ahead and omit it by saying omit the record, but you have to be clicked into the record. So first, before you do that, go into this mode where you're actually in edit, then go ahead and cancel out so that you're in that record. You can see the black bar at the end of the row where you actually are in that record. Now you can omit it. I omitted it. Now this is the only record that is showing. Now with lots of records, that one single record would be omitted. It's a way of sorting through and removing certain records that you do not want displayed, or when you're going to print a record or records you don't want displayed in the listing. Now to show the record again, you can say show omitted, and what it would do is it would show just the omitted record that you had, and it would flip out of the mode where it showed all the rest of the records. So there's two ways you can use this. You can omit a record and then show maybe one or more records as omitted as the ones you want to print. It's kind of a backwards way of thinking, but that's what it does. Then you can say omit multiple, where you highlight or do a find and then omit all the records in find, and then you show the omitted, and then they would be the ones that be shown. Okay, I hope that is kind of clear. Once again, I'm going to say show all, and what that's going to do, it's going to bring them all back into view, and there they're all back. Now in a find, which I'll cover in a new movie help, video help shortly, I will talk about doing that. Sorting you can do where you sort and it actually picks one of the field criteria to sort by, and you can do that in the server and it's not going to affect anything. It'll be fine to do that. In a lot of cases on my apps, I will put these in italics, the titles, and if they have an italic built into them, that means they will sort by that particular field. Home takes you back to the main screen, and this is very important when you're using the log out. At the end of your session, always log out of the cloud server. The reason for that is if you just go ahead and close the browser, you're still logged in, and what will happen is it will time out and lock the records for the person that logged in, and it'll hold that time for, it could be 24 hours. So you wouldn't be able to get back in. So always log out. Make sure that you log out. That's a protection, because what happens is if somebody came in and sat right down at the computer after you got up and walked away, if you didn't log out, they could click and come right back into your record system again. because you're currently logged in. So it's not a good idea to close the browser or vacate the browser. Now there is also a timeout on the server. It's usually 15 to 30 minutes. So if you get up and walk away from your computer and come back, it's possible that it would have timed out, and what you're going to have to do is go back in and log back in to get back into your application. Okay, that is only if you leave this data up on the screen. If you just close the browser, that's a different situation where it still thinks you're logged in. Okay, that pretty much covers the screens, and I'll cover this other information later. Now, just point out that this little button right here is used. It says show hide. There's also a show hide on the screen, which I'll cover, but I want to point this out while we're viewing it. If you click on that particular little icon, when it turns to a hand, it will hide the menu bar. This is kind of nice to know in case you want to use only the internal buttons that are provided in the application, and you don't have a need to use the other buttons on the screen. On most of my newest applications, all the buttons for the cloud are on the main screens as you go through the application. So if you have any more questions and you do not understand anything, please contact me and I'll explain those to you. Thank you.